Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the professor, and this is the moment of truth.
Some say as long as there's a tag saying made in China, the bag can never be luxury. However, in fact, more than 80% of the luxury bags in the world are made in China. But those luxury brands just won't acknowledge that. They take almost finished bags from China factories back to their own factories and just do the repackaging and logo installing, something like that. That way, the bags will appear at their boutiques as made in Italy or made in France. You know, those sophisticated European countries, which make you feel mysterious, royal, and thus luxury. Now, close your eyes. Let's just do a little, very easy experiment in your head, okay? Imagine that you have an Hermes bag, and suddenly the label on it changed from made in France into made in China, while everything else, like leathers, zippers, and hardware remain the same. Do you suddenly feel that your bag is not as luxury as before? If you do, that means you have been misled and poisoned by the market campaign of those too long. Welcome to the real world. Now you see, those bags are made in China by our intelligent and diligent Chinese artisans. Let's not be poisoned and misled by the market campaign any longer and be a real person. Buy a bag from us, from our factory in China. See the real world for yourself. Birkin bag at Hermes boutique will cost you 38,000 USD. But what is the real cost out of the factory? Today, I'm going to break it down in front of you, step by step. First thing first, Hermes only use the leathers from the 3 top-level suppliers. One is called MoT from Italy. And the second is Weinheim from Germany. And the third is Haas from France. One piece of Togo leather, the same leather as this one, will cost 450 USD. And one piece of the leather is only enough to make one Birkin, okay? The thread. And of course, for Hermes Birkin, the thread is also the best top level. It's called Fil al Chinois from France. This is actually the Rolls Royce in thread. For each bag, the cost is 25 USD. And then the hardware. See, this hardware is called 316 hardware. It's also known as the ocean stainless steel because it can withstand the erosion of seawater. It's the best stainless steel. For one piece of bag, the hardware will cost 150 USD. The edge oil. This edge oil is imported from Italy. It's called heat sealed edge oil. For each bag, it will cost 50 USD. The interior lining, it used lambskin imported from France. For each bag, the cost will be 100 USD. And also inside, there is a zipper from Riri brand. And the zipper for one bag is 10 USD. And then the cost of human resource. The French artisans is much more expensive than Chinese artisans. To finish one bag, the human resource cost will be 600 USD. The package, now this is not that expensive, it's 10 USD. So now to sum those up, the total cost will be 1,400 USD for one Birkin out of factory. But why Hermes will charge you 38,000 USD for one bag? That's because more than 90% of the price is paid for its logo. But if you do not care about the logo, you just want the same quality, same material, you can just buy from us. Because for our bags, we use exactly the same material, same leather, same hardware, same edge oil. The only difference is one, we don't have the logo, so we don't have to pay so much amount of money just for that logo. And second, our human resource is much cheaper. This is why this bag from our factory only costs you 1,000 USD, but even better quality and craftsmanship.
The Chinese really know how to hit Americans where it hurts, in their ego. The Chinese are stepping up the tariff war by exposing that the vast majority of designer bags that so many American women are addicted to are actually made in part or in whole in China. They then doubled down by giving people links to where they can buy the bags direct from these Chinese factories that allegedly make them. According to the online videos that are going viral, what's been happening allegedly is that the bags are made in China and then shipped to the European corporations that paid for them, these big designer luxury brands, and then those companies put their logos on the bags, and due to the way that the EU regulations are written, merely putting your logo on these items in Europe makes it where you can stamp them made in Italy, etc. Now, of course, you notice that I'm putting the word allegedly in here. These are the Chinese that we're talking about here, and there is a trade war going on, and these guys believe in hitting below the belt. And none of their claims have actually been proven, but considering the way that these corporations work, globalism and all of that, it's certainly plausible that this is exactly what's been going on. And the rules and regulations in the EU regarding what qualifies as made in such and such, or product of such and such, or assembled in so and so are not exactly cut and dried. The actual rules say in order to claim that something was made in an EU member country, the product has to have underwent its last substantial processing or manufacturing in that country. Substantial processing or manufacturing? Now, those are terms that are so vague, they're doing a lot of heavy lifting there. If all a company has to do is merely attach their label, does that qualify? You may think you're getting a luxury bag, but are you actually getting nothing more than an EU regulatory loophole? Now, the white media is poo-pooing these claims by the Chinese, and while the French and Italians and others do have facilities in Europe where their luxury items are made, the question is how much of the materials in their luxury items are actually made in Europe or even assembled there. Why is this sending shockwaves? Because China is pushing a new type of economic warfare, psychological warfare, meant not just to destabilize the countries that are threatening them, but also the companies in those countries too. Branding is all about perceived value. So what the Chinese are doing is they're devaluing these white European designer labels by getting people to question everything about them that's supposed to make them so exclusive and authentic and attached to a long legacy of the world's finest handmade blah blah blah. China's psychological warfare campaign is officially part of trade war now. And to think the Chinese are using their main propaganda tool, TikTok, in order to put out the word about this. If even part of these luxury goods are sourced from China, or worse, assembled there, then that means the illusion of European luxury that people are trying to buy into will be broken. People, mostly women, who buy these bags do it because they know the bags are expensive, and that's about it. People who are actually rich don't run around in designer anything. You see Jeff Bezos wearing Fendi or Louis Vuitton. You see Mark Zuckerberg wearing Gucci. They own most of the wealth in America, and yet they don't believe in wearing their wealth. They believe in controlling their money and yours. Sadly, too many silly black folks do believe in wearing their wealth or driving it. And as I've always told you, when it comes to money, it don't pay to advertise. But worse than that, we tend to buy things that depreciate in value. That overpriced bag or that highly inflated car you bought lost 30% of its value the moment you took it off the lot, and its value will never go up again. And as common as these so-called luxury bags and shoes are today, are you really buying something that's an investment? Do you plan to sell it in the future? Get real. And yet you got some black folks who are so silly that they'll buy a bag that costs more than a car because they're trying to impress other people. The Chinese understand something that the Europeans figured out a long time ago, that you can monetize people's emotional insecurity. When people are desperate to be validated, desperate to be seen as a somebody by other people, they'll go to extreme lengths, stupid lengths. This is why all of these scam financial influencers you see who run around pretending to be millionaires is so proliferate. Forbes put an under 30 mega-millionaire entrepreneur on their covers, and a disproportionate number of them wound up getting prosecuted for fraud. People are just trying to fake it till they make it, but that can be fatal. There's one other question, though, that I had about all this. Why is China making this particular move now, especially where luxury goods are concerned? Aren't they killing the golden goose? In practical terms, not too many people are going to buy a luxury handbag from China precisely because their brand doesn't have much perceived value. That's the reason why you create a brand in the first place. People buy Toyotas because they're high-quality cars. They have a rock-solid reputation for being dependable. The Toyota brand's perceived value is that they have real reliability. Their cars will run till the wheels fall off, no matter how much you neglect them. But nobody buys a Toyota because they think that it's going to impress other people, or is supposed to make other people think that you're rich. Toyota's brand value is that they're excellent quality, not that they're sumptuous or that they're going to pamper you. Even the Lexus is not some extremely sought-after ultra-high-end vehicle. It's a luxury car, true, but mostly it's also seen as a very dependable vehicle. Chinese-made luxury goods, even if people were willing to overlook the stigma that Chinese goods carry for low quality, they're still not going to become a go-to item like Gucci or Versace because they don't have the same reputation. Sure, there will be those who buy them simply because the bags look like the kind that people see in the exclusive designer stores. But without the well-known designer logo and the brand perception that's accrued to it, all people will think is that you have a very nice-looking purse. But then again, for how much the Chinese are producing them for, that would still be sufficient to make it worth their while. Again, it's hard to tell what exactly the end game here is supposed to be other than what it appears to be. But to return to my earlier point about why the Chinese would go scorched earth like this when they're undermining their own manufacturing too, well, perhaps the Chinese see things differently. Half of China's wealthiest buyers were the latter half of millennials and all of Gen Z. Not to mention that around last year, the Chinese government, which runs the society, has been cracking down on wealth influencers on social media. Their economy has already run into problems, so they wanted to get the rich, who the Communist Party caters to the most, to stop being so flashy, tighten their belts. But after people have had a taste of the good life and gotten used to being crazy rich Asians, flashing all of their money, getting attention for it, it's challenging to tell them to go back to being modest and not draw attention to themselves, especially when that's what their status is attached to now. And over there, status means far more than it means even in the US. China has the same problem that the United States has, in that they too have produced a lot of university graduates with degrees, but now there's too many degree holders chasing way too few jobs. As a result, for a lot of youth in China, being some sort of influencer is actually a career option. People on both sides of the Pacific love to live vicariously through people who are rich or otherwise financially well off. So for the youth, if they can fake it till they make it, it will actually be lucrative enough for a lot of them to go ahead and do it regardless of what they think because, truth be told, they have few other economic options. Due to how the economy has contracted over the last few decades, we're seeing practicality and usefulness become more important than whether you think something will feed a shallow ego. Alright, now, why is this the subject of this morning's briefing? Because it dovetails with Monday's briefing about defunding all anti-black businesses, which, truth be told, would include these Chinese ones too. But here's what I found significant about all of this. I gotta tip my hat to the Chinese for how they've handled this situation. Dr. John Henrik Clarke said that if there's something you're interested in, you're supposed to own it. If you like cars, you're supposed to own a car factory, or at least a dealership. If you like shoes, you're supposed to own a shoe factory. And if you like luxury handbags, then you're supposed to make luxury handbags. You're supposed to own a handbag factory. The Chinese have done all these things. They don't just buy things, and they don't just produce them either. They own companies that make these things. The Chinese love luxury goods, so they got into the business of making them. They didn't just become customers of Gucci bags, they decided to figure out how to make them for themselves. This gave them an economic floor, but it's also provided them with leverage too. Not just with the US, but with the Europeans. Too many black people are content to be reduced to nothing more than everyone else's customer. We're trendsetters. Everybody looks to us for trends and ideas, but because we've been robbed of the financial wherewithal to produce goods, our ideas get taken by others who use the wealth that white power handed them to monetize what we create. The only reason we don't have luxury brands that we own is because we think everybody else's ice is colder. White power used rappers and entertainers to push their clothing and accessories onto us, and too many black people drank the Kool-Aid. You got black folks who have been killed in pursuit of so-called designer handbags and shoes, items that only cost about $30 to $50 to make, not because this or that fool wanted a pair of Jordans or a Prada bag, but because they hope that some white company's clothing or accessory label will give them the outward appearance of status that they lack. White power used its media monopoly and societal control to demonize black people, and they've done so for hundreds of years. And you got Negroes silly enough to think that they can buy white social acceptance from the same people who devalued us in the first place. But it's not just white companies selling luxury products. We do this with everyone else too. We ignore our own, and we go out of our way to make excuses not to patronize black businesses. And for what? Branding is perceived value. If you perceive that black is good enough and that black has legitimacy, then it does. Everyone uses our lingo and our culture to legitimize their own products, to give themselves a new lease on life for clothing brands that have been dying for decades. That's power that we have, but we keep giving it away. And you'll notice that while I do think that buying expensive luxury items is a sign of foolishness and not wealth, I don't necessarily criticize black people for wanting or having these things, but I do want us to think about who it is we buy these things from. Tommy Hilfiger hated black people, and yet it's black people who are the main ones who bought his clothing and made him wealthy. As I said earlier this week, too many of us are addicted to self-hate. We don't buy clothing and handbags and shoes from these anti-black racists because they're of superior quality. They're made by the same sweatshops who make these knockoffs. We buy these things because we hope giving masses some money will make them like us. Or perhaps some of us hope that it will make us a little bit more like them. You can't buy whiteness, and you shouldn't be trying. People in the hood and white kids looking to rebel are constantly trying to get themselves street cred or credibility with the streets. But most people want this instantly and on the cheap. That's why looking the part is so important. What we see with luxury goods is black people pursuing white cred or credibility with white society. Luxury goods are part and parcel of elite society. These are things reserved for the select few. If you can't be rich, at least have some absurdly overpriced accessory instead. That seems to be the thinking. People are always looking for shortcuts to status. This is where the stolen valor phenomenon comes from. People who didn't get very far in the military will lie and claim that they were a Navy SEAL or something, or in many cases, people who weren't in the military at all falsely claim that they were. Because if branding is perceived value, and it is, then the idea that being white is somehow smarter, more classy, or sophisticated, well, that's the best example of perceived value imaginable. Whatever it is you're talking about doesn't actually have to be as valuable as you say it is. You just have to get people to perceive that it is, and that comes through conditioning. Once you do that, you can lead them around by the nose. You've taken a fiction and you've made it into their reality. If you see a black person wearing some designer item that was made by other black people and you think that it's not as good, then the problem is you. Your response should be the opposite. If a black person has taken out the time and invested the know-how and effort into making something that is meant to magnify and enhance your style and image, then that should make it more valuable, not less. That's what the Chinese guy was saying at the beginning.
Imagine that you have an Hermes bag and suddenly the label on it changed from made in France into made in China. Do you suddenly feel that your bag is not as luxury as before? If you do, that means you have been misled and poisoned by the market campaign of those too long. Welcome to the real world.
You see, they understand how perceived value actually works. Do you? Regardless, it's social status on white society's terms that we're talking about here. If you're someone who actually forked out hundreds if not thousands of dollars just for a piece of leather with a logo attached to it, and it wasn't based on its quality or your need for it, but rather based on you wanting to have other people look at you differently, then all that's going to happen is you're going to help some white company get the bag, while all you're going to get is left holding the bag. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Jason Frazier, General Locks, Carvin Gordon, Rebellious Zoe, and Deep Eye 904. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.